May 1945. Texas. The war was almost over, but none of them knew what peace looked like anymore. They had been told they were being taken to the desert. No shade. No water. You'll vanish there. Those were the words that followed them through every border, every checkpoint, every night in the boxcars that smelled of straw and oil. When the train stopped, there was no desert. Only open space, too wide, too bright. Trucks waited beside the tracks, their engines coughing in the dry wind. The guards wore tan uniforms, not gray. Their rifles were slung low like afterthoughts. No one shouted. No one raised a hand. The women stepped down slowly, boots touching American dust for the first time. 17 of them, former Luftwaffe clerks, typists, radio auxiliaries, captured outside Reims when their unit collapsed. Their hands were thin, their eyes sunken, their coats marked with faded insignia now stripped bare. They expected to be humiliated. They expected to be photographed, paraded, maybe punished. That was what the leaflets had promised, *the Americans hate you most star. Yet the soldiers only counted them, marked names, ticked boxes. One guard handed each woman a tin tag stamped with a number. The letters read *US Army PW. Prisoner of war. No one explained what those initials meant in practice. They climbed into the trucks. The ride was long and silent. The road stretched past cotton fields and fences, white barns scattered like ships in dust. The air smelled of something unfamiliar, grass mixed with fuel and sweat. No ruins. No sirens. Just wind. Inside the truck bed, Marta kept her hands on her knees. She used to type weather reports for the Luftwaffe in Hamburg, until the bombing turned her office into ash. She had been evacuated to France, captured by the 7th Army, processed through Le Havre, then shipped across the Atlantic. She hadn't seen her reflection in months. Now, the sunlight off the truck mirror startled her. The face looking back was someone else. The other spoke in fragments. They say women here work in fields. They'll shave us. They'll make us dig. Rumors kept them alive. Fear gave structure to the day. By the time the truck stopped, the sun was low. A wooden sign read *Camp Hereford, U.S. Army Internment Facility. Beyond the gate, barbed wire stretched in long straight lines, neat and even. They were led through a fenced corridor. Everything moved by rule, the guard steps, the clipboards, the rotation of keys. No one touched them. No one raised a voice. It was this absence of violence that felt strange, even cruel. Each woman emptied her pockets. Handkerchiefs, buttons, one silver locket, a folded letter written months ago but never sent. The officer in charge, tall, expressionless, looked through the items and placed them in numbered envelopes. A personal property. Returned after processing. His English was slow, deliberate. Some words they understood. Others they guessed. When the officer gestured toward a table, they hesitated. A stack of forms lay there, English on one side, German on the other. One of the women whispered, "It's a confession." But the guard only pointed to the line marked *name, date of birth, place of capture. Nothing more. They signed. One by one. Pens scratching like insects across paper. In the barracks, bunks lined the walls in perfect order. Thin mattresses. Wool blankets. A bucket of water in the corner. No locks on the doors, but guards patrolled outside. The silence pressed heavier than chains. At dusk, they were given soup, thin but warm, and bread that smelled faintly sweet. A woman stared at it for minutes before eating. "It's poison," someone said. "They'll wait till night." Yet hunger eventually won. They ate in silence, eyes fixed on the floor. The next morning, the whistle blew before sunrise. A voice called names, mispronouncing each one. The women lined up, coats buttoned, hair pinned. The officer read orders: labor detail, temporary assignment, local ranch work under Red Cross supervision. A murmur ran through them. Asterisk work? Outside the camp, asterisk no one believed it. They waited for clarification, for someone to say it was punishment. Instead, the officer said only, "You will be escorted. Obey instructions. You will return at dusk." They climbed again into trucks. The road wound past flat fields and grazing cattle. No fences this time, only open land. When they stopped, there were no soldiers, only men in broad hats and faded shirts. They stood near a corral, the smell of horses thick in the air. Their boots were dusty, their eyes curious but calm. One of the women whispered, "Civilians?" Another replied, "No, guards in disguise." But the men didn't look like guards. One nodded toward the stables and handed out work gloves. Their English rolled slow, lazy, words stretched by accent. Some sounded German, softened by years. "Clean stalls. Feed stock. Don't spook the horses." That was all they said. The women hesitated, unsure if it was an order or a test. Then, seeing no rifles, they began to work. They swept hay, filled buckets, stacked feed. Every movement careful, rehearsed. The men watched for a while, then left them alone. Hours passed. The sun burned the fields, sweat mixing with dust on their faces. Yet still, no shouting, no punishment. Only the quiet rhythm of work. At noon, one cowboy brought out a tin pail of water. He placed it on the ground, nodded once, and walked away. They waited 5 minutes before touching it. When they did, they drank in silence, each sip trembling. Later, a shadow moved across the barn door, the same man again, this time carrying rope and tools. He stopped near the women and said, "Tomorrow, we brand the calves." The word brand made them freeze. Brand, in German memory, meant burning. Marking. Ownership. He saw their faces and paused, realizing the fear. "A cattle," he added softly. "Not you." Then he walked out. No one spoke for the rest of the day. When evening came, the trucks returned to take them back. No one had escaped. No one had even thought to. The open land itself was a kind of prison, too vast to run from, too silent to fight. As the sky dimmed, the same cowboy walked over, handed Marta a tin cup, and said, "You'll help in the barn tomorrow." His voice had no threat in it, only statement. She nodded, though she didn't understand why. As the truck rolled away, she looked back once, saw the barn, the field, the figures fading into dusk. No fences, no watchtowers. Just space. In her lap, the work gloves rested heavy, still carrying the smell of leather and sweat. She kept them there all the way back to camp, unsure whether they were a tool or a warning. Inside her, something more unsettling than fear began to grow, disbelief. They waited that night for the cruelty they knew must come. It never did. And that, somehow, felt worse. The second morning began with the same whistle, the same thin light leaking through the barrack slats. The women dressed in silence. The work gloves from the ranch lay folded at the edge of each bunk, still damp with yesterday's sweat. No one spoke on the truck ride. They had learned that silence was safer than translation. The road stretched wide again, the same dust, the same long fences. Somewhere in the distance, a windmill creaked like an old hinge. At the ranch, the cowboys waited. One leaned against a fence post, chewing something dark, his hat low over his eyes. He nodded once when they arrived. The others went back to work as if nothing unusual was happening, as if a handful of enemy women cleaning their barns was simply part of the morning. The women began sweeping, stacking hay, carrying buckets. Their movements had rhythm now, not confidence, but repetition. By noon, the fear had dulled into habit. Marta noticed small details. The way the men spoke slowly, as if afraid to startle them. The way they left distance, 3 steps, never closer. There was a kind of unspoken choreography, cautious and unthreatening. Still, the unease clung to everything. When one cowboy motioned toward the soap bucket, Liesl stepped back. The bar was smooth, white, stamped with the word *ivory. A memory flared. The rumor whispered in camps back in Europe that the rye had made soap from the dead. She froze, hands trembling. The man frowned, confused. It's just soap, he said, placing it down. But the word *, meant nothing. Fear had its own language, and it translated every kindness into danger. Later, a small event turned into panic. One of the women, Greta, found a box of grey powder stacked near the feed. A label read a DDT as she whispered to the others, it's poison. They avoided the barn for hours, believing it was meant for them. Only when a soldier demonstrated, dusting the powder on the stall floor to kill insects, did they understand. But understanding did not erase the instinct to flinch. Every act of mercy felt like bait. That night, Marta lay awake on her bunk. She could hear breathing, shifting straw, someone whispering prayers. The air smelled faintly of cedar and soap. She thought of Hamburg, the apartment that no longer existed, the letters she'd written that had never reached anyone. Somewhere across an ocean, her mother might still be waiting for word. Or might already be gone. Sleep came like surrender. In the dream, she saw her capture again. France, February 1945. Their convoy trapped on a narrow road near Nancy, Allied jeeps cutting off the exits. Orders screamed, papers burned, typewriters smashed against pavement. Marta had raised her hands, ink still on her fingers. No shots. Just silence and confusion. That same silence now filled Texas. It was not peace. It was suspension, the kind that keeps you from falling only because it never moves. Days became indistinguishable. Work, eat, return, sleep. The Cowboys remained distant but never hostile. Sometimes they tried small talk. "Do you from Germany?" one asked. Marta nodded. My folks came from there. Long time ago." He gestured vaguely toward the horizon, as if Germany were just another county. She didn't know how to reply. Another day, while they were cleaning tack, a cowboy said, "Y'ain't no shame in work." The word *shame* caught their ears. The German women heard *chain. Panic rippled. They froze, thinking he had said *no chain*, or maybe *there will be chains. He saw their faces, frowned, then muttered, "Forget it." Fear translated faster than language ever could. By the end of the week, Marta noticed small changes. The women began humming while they worked, not songs, just notes, low and directionless. It was the sound of exhaustion softening. At mealtimes, the Cowboys sometimes left small things on the table, a piece of cornbread, a tin of jam. They never said why. No one dared eat first. But when nothing happened, they began to share quietly, heads bowed like thieves. At the main camp, rules continued with bureaucratic precision. The camp officer read aloud from the Geneva Convention poster pinned to the wall, *A prisoners of war shall be permitted to send and receive letters and cards. * He folded the paper after reading, as if reciting law were enough to make it real. But everyone knew the truth, no letters had gone out in months. The Red Cross was overwhelmed, routes disrupted. The women's voices were sealed within barbed wire. Marta's locket was returned to her that night, the officer said, "Personal item, cleared." Inside was the photograph she had placed there 2 years earlier, now faded to a ghost of a face. She traced the outline with her thumb until the paper wore thin. The next morning, clouds moved in, rare for Texas. The air cooled. They were herded into the barn early to avoid rain. One of the Cowboys lit a lantern and began marking crates. Marta saw letters printed in black, USDA feed, property of government. The words looked severe, almost military. She whispered to Liesl, "Everything here belongs to someone. Even the air." At noon, the foreman called a break. The women sat near the barn doors, sipping from tin cups. The wind brought the smell of hay and cattle. Somewhere, a radio crackled faintly, swing music, slow and alien. One of the cowboys began sorting mail sacks near a jeep. The women watched in silence. The bags were heavy, stamped with the Red Cross emblem. He tossed them onto the truck bed, one after another, as if it were nothing. Greta asked in a whisper, "A mail for who?" "A soldiers, maybe." "Our officers." "Our, for us?" The last idea hung in the air, absurd but electric. They watched the truck drive off, dust trailing behind. That night, no one could sleep. The barricade vibrated with unspoken thoughts. If the Americans could send mail, perhaps letters could leave the camp. But to whom? To what remained of home? Liesl said quietly, "They won't let us write. They'll say it's propaganda." Marta replied, "And maybe they don't care what we say anymore." The words felt dangerous, freedom spoken in miniature. By morning, the rumor had grown. They will make us write confessions. They will test us. They will laugh at us. Every kindness in captivity twisted itself into suspicion, because trust required something they no longer owned: belief. The truck arrived again, same time, same path. But this time, the cowboys didn't speak at all. They worked alongside the women, silent, focused. The air between them was heavy with mutual caution. As dusk approached, the foreman wiped his hands, glanced toward the women, then toward the horizon. Something in his posture had changed, less guarded, more human. He seemed to weigh a decision quietly in his mind. When the trucks rolled back toward camp, the women sensed something shifting, though they couldn't name it. The foreman had stayed behind, staring at the barn door as if looking for words that didn't exist yet. In the truck, Marta held the locket against her chest. The road vibrated beneath them, same dust, same hum. But tonight, hope pressed faintly at the edge of fear, too fragile to trust, too persistent to silence. The narrator's voice settles into quiet. They began to suspect that mercy might be real. But for those who had survived on fear, the idea of kindness was unbearable. The morning that changed everything began like all the others, the same whistle, the same boots on the dirt floor, the same tired dust that clung to every breath. But when the truck arrived, the foreman wasn't there. Instead, a young lieutenant in khaki stepped down, clipboard in hand. He spoke softly with the camp sergeant, then turned toward the women. "Line up, please." The women obeyed, eyes lowered. Marta stood near the front, locket hidden under her collar. The officer's tone was calm but deliberate, a kind of careful, rehearsed English meant for foreign ears. "Under Geneva rule, he said, you are permitted to send letters home. The Red Cross has opened new mail channels. Each of you may write one page." The words hung in the air like something holy and unbelievable. For a moment, no one moved. They had heard similar things before: rumors, misheard translations, cruel jokes whispered by guards. Marta waited for laughter. None came. The lieutenant gestured to the truck. Inside were small bundles, lined paper, stubby pencils, envelopes printed with the Red Cross insignia. The cowboys stood nearby, awkwardly watching, hats in their hands. Marta blinked hard, trying to understand. One letter. One chance to speak through the barbed wire. The officer continued, "You will write here, under supervision. Say whatever you wish. Letters will be inspected, but they will go out." No one breathed. Then Liesl made a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Her knees gave slightly. It was like a dam cracking. The others followed. Shoulders trembled. A few pressed their hands to their mouths to hold the sound in. Marta felt her throat close as the truth settled. It was real. For the first time in years, they were being asked to speak, not ordered to obey. The tables were set up inside the barn. Dust floated in the light, turning every movement into something sacred. Each woman was given a single sheet of paper. The pencils were worn to half their size, but to them they looked like instruments of resurrection. Marta sat and stared at the blank page. Her hand shook. How does one begin after silence that long? For a moment, the room was silent except for the scratching of graphite. A few women wrote quickly, words tumbling like water. Others sat frozen, unable to start. Some whispered lines aloud in German, as if testing the shape of remembered words. The cowboys stood near the doorway, hats pressed to their chests. None of them spoke. They seemed to understand they were witnessing something fragile. Marta finally wrote. Main lieb Mutter *. It was instinct, the old form, the one she used before everything burned. Her eyes blurred. She wrote slowly, every word a piece of herself retrieved from the rubble of memory. I am alive. I am in a camp in America. The people here are strange but not cruel. We work with animals. The sky is very large. I hope you are safe. I dream of home every night. Your daughter, Marta. She stopped. The simplicity hurt more than anything. There were no politics, no ideology left to hide behind, just the raw ache of wanting to be known alive. Across the barn, Greta was weeping openly. Liesl smiled faintly through her tears as she wrote, I touched a horse today. It did not fear me. The officer collected the letters carefully, placing each one into an envelope. The Red Cross stamp came down with a dull thud, like the heartbeat of mercy. When the truck rolled away with the mail sack, the women stood watching until the dust swallowed it. No one spoke for a long time. That night, the barracks were different. Softer. The air no longer felt like a cage but like a held breath. For the first time, some of them laughed, short, brittle sounds, as if rediscovering how. Marta lay awake long after lights out. She kept seeing the image of her letter being driven into the distance. Somewhere beyond the desert, beyond the ocean, maybe her mother would touch that same paper. The thought broke her completely. She turned her face into the pillow and cried, not the silent, contained tears of captivity, but the shaking, uncontrollable kind. It was grief and gratitude at once. In the morning, the cowboys noticed the change. The women worked lighter, spoke more, even hummed again, but this time the notes had shape, melody. One cowboy asked Marta, "You write your folks?" She nodded. Feels good, huh?" She hesitated. It hurts." He looked confused, then nodded slowly. Sometimes that's how good starts." Weeks passed. The letters went out, and some, unbelievably, came back. Thin envelopes with red markings, carried across oceans. The first return arrived for Greta. She clutched it like a holy relic, afraid to open it. Inside was a single line from her brother, written in trembling German, *, we thought you were dead. We pray for you every day. *. After that, everything changed. The camp no longer felt like punishment. It felt like pause, a strange purgatory between two broken worlds. The women began helping on the ranch with more purpose. They learned the rhythm of the cattle drives, how to braid rope, how to oil a saddle. Sometimes the cowboys taught them songs, simple country ballads. The accents mixed, Texas drawl against northern German vowels, but no one cared. By early autumn, the fields turned golden. The Red Cross organized a photograph, POW women standing beside American ranchers, horses behind them, flags in the distance. Marta didn't smile, but her eyes were clear. That night, she received permission to write one more letter. This time she wrote not to her mother, but to herself, a kind of record, folded carefully into her locket. Texas, 1945. I have learned that mercy is not a weakness. It is a kind of strength that asks nothing in return. I will never understand these people, their easy laughter, their music, their patience, but I will remember them. When the world was broken, they handed me paper and let me speak. She sealed it inside and never told anyone. When the war ended months later, the announcement came through a crackling radio at sunset. The camp fell silent. The women didn't cheer. They just looked at one another. The war that had stolen everything was finally over, but the question of what remained had no answer. The next morning, the cowboys loaded the trucks for the last time. The women were to be sent east for repatriation. The foreman approached Marta as she climbed aboard. He held out a small package, a pair of worn leather gloves, cleaned and folded. For work, he said. She looked at him, unsure if she could speak. "Adank," she whispered. He tipped his hat. "You wrote good letters," he said. The truck engine started. As it rolled away, Marta turned once more toward the ranch, the fences glinting in sunlight, the wide Texas sky unbroken and merciful. The narrator's voice returns, quiet and steady. A history remembers battles and borders. But sometimes the real war ends with a pencil, a sheet of paper, and the courage to say, *I am still here. *.